Well, good evening. Welcome to Grover Hill United Methodist Church Thursday evening devotions from around the kitchen table. This evening, with 4th of July just only 4 days away, I just kind of wanted to throw out a story perhaps we haven't heard for a long time, but it deals with gaining our freedom. So I want us to think about where does our freedom come from this weekend, and what can we do to avoid losing our freedom. You know, sometimes we let other people take our freedom, but sometimes we enslave ourselves too. We put ourselves in bondage by the things we do and the things we can't get away from. Well, anyway, John's Gospel, Jesus was teaching, and he tells us in chapter 8, verse 36, whom the Son sets free is free indeed. In other words, whom Jesus sets free is free indeed. And so it's this story I want to share with you this evening about a people, the colonists, who were mostly British in the day. Certainly the colonies were under British control back in the 1700s and before. But tea was a big thing, both in Britain and in the colonies. It was evidently everybody drank tea back then. So it was on December the 16th in 1773, there was a group of Massachusetts colonists disguised as Mohawk Indians. They boarded 3 ships that were carrying tea, that were moored in Boston Harbor. They dumped 342 chests of tea into the water. Known today as the Boston Tea Party, this midnight raid was a protest of the Tea Act by Britain of 1773. It was created by British Parliament to save the faltering British East India Tea Company by greatly lowering its tea tax and granting it a virtual monopoly on the American tea trade. The low tax allowed the company to sell its tea even more cheaply than the tea that was smuggled into America by Dutch traders. Many colonists viewed the act as yet just another example of Britain's taxation tyranny. Some governments, governments, they don't like for you to mess with their taxes. That's how they keep control over you. If they can keep raising your taxes, they'll bankrupt you, and then you're under their mercy then, You're under their control because they have all the money. And so they don't want you to mess with their taxes because that means that they have to give up control if they lose their taxation. Well, in most American ports, the resistance group known as the Sons of Liberty scared off British tea-carrying ships by threatening their captains with tarring and feathering, or even worse. However, when 3 ships by the names of the Dartmouth, the Eleanor, and the Beaver arrived in Boston Harbor, and the colonists demanded that the tea be returned to England, Thomas Hutchinson, the British appointed governor of Massachusetts, refused to permit ships to leave. So the Patriot leader Samuel Adams organized the now famous Tea Party with about 60 members of the Sons of Liberty. The British tea was dumped into Boston Harbor on the night of December the 16th, and that tea was worth, and it's probably worth a lot more than this by today's standard. This is a couple years ago, but at that time the tea was worth more than $700,000 in today's standard. You do the math. Today they say it was about 90,000 pounds of tea that was dumped in the harbor. Well, Parliament was outraged by the blatant destruction of British property. And so they enacted the Coercive Acts, called the Intolerable Acts by the colonists. In 1774, the Coercive Acts closed Boston Harbor to merchant shipping, established formal British military rule. They eliminated the local governments. And so in Massachusetts, they controlled all the government in Massachusetts, made British officials immune to criminal prosecution in America, and required colonists then to house or quarter British troops. Kind of sounds familiar today. Some of that does right here in our own country today, doesn't it? We make certain people immune from criminal prosecution, and I don't want to get into politics, all that stuff, but some of the similarities are the same that took place almost 250 years ago. The colonists subsequently called the Continental Congress to consider a united American response to the British. On July the 2nd, 1776, the Second Continental Congress voted unanimously to declare independence and separation from England. And 2 days later, on the 4th of July, 1776, voted and approved unanimously independence and separation from England. And then on the 4th of July, 1776, Thomas Jefferson, who was the author, wrote this Declaration of Independence. Well, God was evidently behind all of this and gave them the power. Shooting had already started in 1774 at Concord, and was it Concord and Lexington? And so this 1776 just made it official. And when God sees great injustice being done to his people, see how they're abused and mistreated, he will set them free. By human standards, sometimes it seems like it takes a long time. Just depends. Second, he tells us though in 2 Chronicles chapter 7 verse 14 what he'll do if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and forgive their land, and I will heal their land. I'll forgive their sins and heal their land. And when you see everything happening today, in my lifetime, the world hasn't always, our country hasn't always been like this. It seems like it's getting worse now than it was back in the 60s even. So many young people are not young people, I don't mean it that way, but so many people today act like spoiled children. I didn't get my way, and so wham, 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 I want this and I want that. And they haven't been anywhere, they haven't done anything. Most of them never have even created a job. All they know how to do is say, I want, I want, I want, just like little children. So I guess my question that I think about and I wonder a lot is, how long will we allow our leaders to continue to take us down the path of destruction that we seem to be on? We're turning our backs from God. We have leaders who swear on the Bible. We have leaders who promise to take us in certain directions, and then they lie and they take and turn and go in another direction. And they hurt and destroy many, many people, especially if you disagree with them. We're not going down the godly path that we once walked. How long will it be before we put a stop to this and take, as 2 Chronicles tells us, and take and demand that we return to God and walk His ways? Currently, we just seem to acquiesce and let those who want to cry and whine and fuss because they didn't get their way, we just acquiesce to them and don't say anything. Folks, I think we're going to pay a heavy price as a nation if we continue just to let them whine and bellyache and get their way. But anyway, I didn't mean that to say that to get you depressed. I just hope you have a blessed holiday week. I hope you enjoy the weekend and just give thanks to Almighty God. Have a great and blessed holiday.